Disclaimer: this program contains graphic descriptions of real crimes. Viewer discretion is advised. All parties are presumed innocent until proven guilty in court. They said love finds you when you least expect it. But no one warned Ethan Reeves that love could find him in his own bloodline. He thought he'd finally built the family he never had until a single piece of paper revealed a truth that shattered everything. The woman carrying his child wasn't just his bride, she was his sister, and before the town could even process the horror, one of them would be found bleeding on the floor and the other would never see daylight again. The chapel was small, old, and soaked in sunlight, the kind of place meant for quiet beginnings. But on that humid Saturday morning, there was something uneasy in the air. Guests whispered between smiles, and though no one could put it into words, it felt like something about this union wasn't quite right. Ethan Reeves stood at the altar, hands trembling as he waited for the doors to open. He'd never been the kind of man who believed in fairy tales, but when Lila walked into his life 6 months ago, she made him believe in second chances. She'd come from out of town, a nurse who had just moved to Willow Creek for work. They'd met online on a dating app meant for people seeking something real, and what they found felt like fate. Ethan was 31, a contractor with rough hands and a quiet soul. He'd grown up in foster care, never knowing his real family. Lila said she'd been adopted too. They bonded over that shared emptiness, that ache for belonging. When she walked down the aisle that day, veil catching the golden light, Ethan's heart ached with something deeper than love. It was relief. The feeling of finally being seen, finally being chosen. Her eyes met his, soft and trembling, as if she was holding back a secret or a prayer. But when she smiled, he forgot everything else. Vows were simple, the kiss was real, and when the crowd clapped, Ethan closed his eyes and told himself, this is where life begins. He didn't know that it was also where it would end, because beneath that perfect white dress, beneath those tender smiles, was a truth buried so deep that when it surfaced, it would destroy them both. The first few weeks felt like a dream Ethan never wanted to wake from. The house smelled of fresh paint and candlelight. Their laughter echoed through half-furnished rooms, and at night, the world outside disappeared. They made love like people who believed the world had given them a miracle. Lila's gentle hands brushed against his scars, the physical ones from years of hard labor, and the invisible ones from a lonely childhood. She told him he was safe now, that they were home. Sometimes Ethan caught himself just staring at her, wondering how someone like her could have found someone like him. Their mornings started with burnt toast and laughter. Their nights ended with whispered promises about their unborn child. Because yes, Lila was pregnant, just 2 months along when they said I do. It wasn't planned, but it made everything feel fated. Ethan started building the crib himself. He carved every curve of the wood with his hands, saying it helped him feel connected to something permanent. Lila watched from the doorway, one hand on her belly, smiling like she knew something he didn't. The town adored them, neighbors waved, their pastor blessed them. To everyone, they were the picture of young love, the couple who'd beaten loneliness and built a future from nothing. But behind closed doors, small shadows began to creep in. Sometimes, Lila would wake up in the middle of the night, breathing fast, whispering names Ethan didn't recognize. Mom, don't take him from me. Not again. When he'd ask, she'd brush it off as a dream, but he noticed something else, a strange fear in her eyes whenever she saw old family photos at antique stores or children with familiar features. One morning, as they drove past a playground, Lila went quiet. Ethan glanced over, expecting her to be smiling at the sight of the swings, but instead tears streamed down her face. What's wrong? He asked softly. She wiped them away, forcing a shaky laugh. It's nothing. Just hormones. But that night, when she thought he was asleep, Ethan heard her whisper into the dark, we were never supposed to find each other again. He didn't understand what she meant, not yet, but the words clung to him, wrapping around his heart like a warning he couldn't decipher. In the morning, she was back to her usual self, bright, affectionate, full of plans for the baby. She handed him a mug of coffee and kissed his cheek as if nothing had been said, and Ethan told himself it was fine. People say pregnancy can make anyone act strange, but deep down, he felt it that invisible thread of dread tightening around the perfect little life they'd built, because love wasn't supposed to feel this heavy, and somewhere beneath that gentle domestic bliss, something buried was beginning to stir. It started with something so small, so ordinary, a folder of paperwork on the kitchen counter. Lila had left for a prenatal appointment that morning, humming softly as she buttoned her coat. She'd been forgetting things lately: her wallet, her medical card, her appointment slips. Ethan decided he'd surprise her by organizing it all before she got home. The rain outside was steady, drumming softly against the window. The house smelled of her lavender lotion and the baby lotion samples scattered on the table. Ethan sat down with the manila folders: insurance, ultrasound photos, adoption records. He smiled at that last one. They both used to joke about it. Two orphans finding each other. Fate had to make it up to us somehow. He opened it. The first few pages were what he expected: foster placement dates, old hospital stamps, a war, not birth certificate tucked in the back. But something made him stop. His thumb froze on the ink. Name: Lila Marie Reeves. Mother's name: Clara Reeves. Asterisk father: unknown. Date of birth: July 16, 1998. The rain's rhythm suddenly sounded louder, harsher. That name, Reeves, his name. At first, he thought it was a coincidence. Reeves wasn't rare, but as he flipped through the next pages, the air in the room grew thinner. A photo slipped out: a newborn baby wrapped in a hospital blanket. The mother holding her had eyes Ethan knew better than his own. His mother. He sat there, frozen, the world spinning around him. His heart slammed against his ribs as if trying to escape. No, it couldn't be. He'd been told his sister died at birth. That's what the caseworker said. That's what he built his entire life around: being alone. But the documents said otherwise. The hospital name matched his birthplace. The dates lined up, and the file's closing note read: infant placed for adoption under emergency state order following maternal death. No known siblings. Ethan's breath caught. The room tilted. His hands trembled as he picked up the ultrasound photo from last week, the one Lila had left on the counter with the words "Our Little Miracle" written in blue pen. Now it felt like a curse. He dropped the folder and stumbled back. The chair crashed behind him. For a moment, he couldn't even hear the rain anymore, just the deafening sound of his own heartbeat. His phone buzzed. A message from Lila. "On my way home, got some good news from the doctor. Can't wait to tell you." Ethan stared at the words. His reflection in the screen looked pale and unrecognizable. Good news. He'd built a life on what he thought was love, but now it was something unspeakable. The woman he married. The woman carrying his child. The woman who whispered his name like it meant salvation was his sister. He sank to the floor, the papers scattered around him like snow, his mother's face staring up from the photograph, her handwriting scrawled on the edges: "Take care of each other." By the time Lila walked through the door, smiling, wet from the rain, Ethan was sitting in the living room, surrounded by proof that their love was born from the same blood, and when their eyes met, she seemed to know. She froze, her purse slid off her shoulder, and for the first time since he'd met her, she looked terrified of him. "You knew," he whispered, voice breaking. "Ethan." Her voice trembled. "Please, I can explain." "Explain what?" "That the woman I married shares my mother's name." "I didn't plan this," she cried, stepping closer. "I didn't mean to find you." Ethan backed away, shaking his head. His entire body felt hollow, like someone had scooped the life out of him. She fell to her knees, sobbing, her hands on her belly. "You can hate me, but don't hate him," she said. "He's innocent. Our baby didn't choose this." The room filled with the sound of her crying and Ethan's silence. Outside, thunder cracked through the sky. The truth had come to light, and it wasn't going back into the dark. The sound of rain against the windows turned the house into a kind of confessional, each drop tapping like a heartbeat, each second dragging out the silence between them. Ethan hadn't moved. The adoption papers still lay on the coffee table, edges curling from his shaking hands. Lila knelt on the rug, her face streaked with tears, mascara bleeding down her cheeks like ink on a confession. He spoke first. His voice was low, cracked, but steady enough to make her flinch. "When were you going to tell me?" Lila looked up, eyes red and wide. "I wasn't." She stopped herself. "I didn't know how. I didn't even know for sure until a few months ago." Ethan's jaw clenched. "A few months ago, before the wedding." She nodded slowly, a sob breaking loose from her throat. "My adoptive mother, she got sick. She told me everything before she died. She said she'd been asked to keep the records sealed. Said my mother's name was Clara Reeves. I thought maybe it was just some coincidence, but when I saw your photo online, Ethan, something inside me knew. I just didn't want it to be true." Ethan turned away, his voice rising. Not in rage, but disbelief. "You knew, you felt it, and you still said yes. You still married me." Lila crawled closer, reaching for him, her hand trembling. "Please, don't say it like that. I didn't want to lose you. I spent my whole life searching for someone who felt like home, and then I found you. You were home." He stepped back. The words hit him like a blade. "Home," he whispered. "We're not supposed to be each other's home, Lila. We're supposed to be each other's warning." She crumpled where she was, sobbing into her hands. "I didn't plan any of this. I thought maybe it was fate trying to fix something that was broken. Maybe we were meant to find each other, no matter how wrong it looks." Ethan stared at her, tears burning his eyes, but he didn't let them fall. "Fate doesn't make you love your sister, Lila. Fate doesn't make you." His voice cracked, and he stopped, unable to even say the word pregnant. He turned toward the wall, pressing his palm against the cold paint. "What do we even do now?" Lila's sobs quieted into hiccups. "We protect him," she whispered. "Our baby. Whatever happens, we protect him. He's innocent." The sound of those words made Ethan's chest ache. The baby, their baby, the impossible truth growing between them. He sank into the armchair, exhausted, defeated, his mind splitting between love and disgust, heartbreak and guilt. "We'll have to tell someone," he muttered. "We can't just pretend this never happened." Lila's head snapped up, panic flashing in her eyes. "No, you can't tell anyone, Ethan. Please. They'll take him away. They'll take everything away." "They'll take what away?" he asked bitterly. "The life we shouldn't have had in the first place." She shook her head, whispering, "You don't understand. They'll destroy us. I can't lose another family. Not again." The fear in her voice didn't sound like guilt anymore, it sounded like desperation. Like someone clinging to the edge of sanity, trying not to fall. Ethan pressed his hands to his face, whispering, "We're already destroyed." Layla stood slowly, one hand on her belly, the other reaching toward him. "We can fix this. We can move away, change our names, start over somewhere no one knows us." He looked up at her, hollow-eyed. "And live what? A lie forever? Raise a child who doesn't even know the truth of where he came from?" Her lip trembled. "He doesn't have to know. He doesn't have to suffer. But he will," Ethan said quietly, "because we already are." The wind outside howled through the cracks in the window. For a moment, neither of them spoke. The silence between them wasn't peace, it was poison. Finally, Lila whispered, "I wish I'd never found you." Ethan's eyes lifted to hers, wet, shattered. "Me too." It was the first time either of them had said it out loud, and once it left their lips, the air in the room seemed to change. Lila turned and walked toward the nursery. The room painted in soft yellow, the one that had once smelled like new beginnings. She paused at the door and said, without turning back, "You'll see, Ethan. He's our second chance, not our curse." But as the door closed softly behind her, Ethan felt it deep in his bones. Second chances don't come wrapped in the same blood. They come with consequences, and theirs was just beginning. The days that followed became a slow, unbearable descent into silence. Ethan and Lila still lived under the same roof, but their voices rarely crossed the air between them. Every sound felt heavier now, the kettle's whistle, the ticking clock, the wind brushing against the baby's window. The laughter that once filled the house was gone, replaced by whispered apologies and muffled crying behind closed doors. Ethan slept on the couch most nights, his back aching from the wooden frame. He couldn't sleep beside her anymore. Not after what he knew. Every time he looked at her, he saw both the woman he loved and the blood he should never have touched. He tried to drown it out with work, long hours at the construction site, extra shifts, anything to keep him from coming home to the ghost of a marriage that was never meant to exist. But even away from her, the truth followed him. When his coworkers laughed about their wives, he'd force a smile and stare at the ground. When a client mentioned her newborn niece, his chest tightened until it hurt. He'd begun to wonder if this was how madness started, when every innocent sound reminded you of a sin you never meant to commit. At home, Lila had stopped eating much. Her body thinned, her face hollowed, but her hands never left her belly. She spent hours rocking in the nursery, humming songs that no one taught her. Sometimes Ethan would stand in the hallway, watching through the crack in the door. Her voice was soft, distant, almost like a prayer. "You're not a mistake, baby. You're the only good thing we ever did right." He wanted to believe her, but deep down, he knew their child would carry the weight of this secret forever. The breaking point came one night after dinner, if you could call it dinner, 2 plates untouched. Lila staring at her glass of water, Ethan staring at her. He spoke quietly. "I've been thinking, Lila, after the baby's born, maybe we should give him up for adoption." Her head snapped up. The look on her face, pure terror. "No, don't say that. It might be the only way to protect him." Ethan said, his voice trembled. "If people ever find out, if they test anything." Lila slammed her hand against the table, the sound cracking through the air. "He's ours. You think you can just erase him like some mistake. I'm trying to save him." Ethan yelled, the words breaking free from months of restraint. "You don't understand. He'll never have a normal life. None of us will." Her voice turned sharp, shaking. "You want to give him up because you can't stand to look at me, because I remind you of what we are." Ethan pushed back his chair, standing now, towering but trembling. "You remind me of everything I lost, my parents, my childhood, my chance at a life that wasn't cursed." The silence after that was suffocating. Lila's breath came in small, uneven gasps. Then she laughed, a sound that didn't sound human. "You think this is a curse, Ethan. No, you are. You're ashamed of the only person who ever loved you." Tears welled in his eyes, but he didn't speak. He just turned and walked toward the door. Lila stood suddenly, clutching her belly. "If you walk out that door, Ethan, don't come back." He froze, his hand on the knob. "Maybe that's for the best." She whispered something so soft it almost vanished into the hum of the fridge. "If you leave, you'll lose us both." He didn't respond. The door clicked shut behind him, and the night swallowed him whole. He slept in his truck that night, parked near the river. Rain hammered against the roof, and he stared at the photo of their last ultrasound clipped to the dashboard. The tiny heartbeat that had once filled him with hope now made him sick with dread. Back home, Lila sat in the nursery, whispering lullabies to a child that hadn't been born yet. But her whispers were darker now. Please, promises, and the kind of love that borders on obsession. "Daddy doesn't understand, baby, but Mommy does. Mommy will never let them take you away." She rocked in the dim light until dawn, humming through her tears, the knife block glinting faintly on the kitchen counter just beyond the nursery door. Neither of them realized it yet, but the house had already begun to rot from the inside out. Love had turned to shame, shame to fear, and fear, soon, would turn to blood. The night the baby came, the sky over Willow Creek bled gray and restless. Rain battered the roof again, as if the heavens themselves were trying to wash the house clean. Lila's screams cut through the wind just past midnight. Ethan bolted from the couch, heart pounding, the sound so raw it almost didn't sound human. He ran into the hallway, finding her doubled over near the nursery door, her nightgown soaked in sweat and amniotic fluid. "It's time," she gasped. "He's coming." He didn't hesitate. He grabbed the hospital bag, threw on his jacket, and carried half, led her through the storm. The drive felt endless, wipers slapping, thunder chasing them like punishment. Lila clawed at his arm between contractions. "Promise me you won't leave me, Ethan." She whispered between sobs, "No matter what they say, promise me you'll stay." He looked at her, eyes glassy, and said the only truth he could manage, "I'll stay until I can't." She cried harder. Neither of them said another word. The delivery room smelled of bleach and panic. Doctors rushed, nurses murmured, and under the harsh fluorescent lights, everything looked too bright, too exposed. Ethan stood by her side, hand gripping her so tight their knuckles turned white. Lila screamed, begged, cursed the world and everyone in it. Hours later, it was over. The doctor smiled faintly, holding a small, crying bundle into the light, a healthy baby boy. For one fragile moment, time stopped. Lila reached for him, tears of joy cutting through exhaustion. "Ethan, look at him." But Ethan didn't move. He stared at the child as if staring into a mirror of everything he'd lost. His mother's mouth, his own eyes, her chin. The resemblance struck him like lightning, sharp and unbearable. The nurse placed the baby in Lila's arms. She cradled him, whispering, "You're perfect, my beautiful boy." Ethan turned away. He couldn't bring himself to touch the child, couldn't even look too long without feeling something dark claw at his chest. The nurse smiled politely. Would the father like to hold him? Lila looked up, hope flickering in her tired eyes. Ethan's voice cracked, "Not yet." That night, while Lila slept, Ethan stood by the hospital window, staring at the storm outside. The rain blurred the streetlights into streaks of white. His reflection looked like a stranger's, gaunt, hollow, afraid. He whispered under his breath, almost as if speaking to the ghost of his mother. "What have I done?" The words barely left his lips before he felt something, warmth, tiny and real, against his hand. The nurse had come in quietly, holding the baby out to him. "Your son needs you," she said gently. Ethan hesitated, then took the child. For the first time, he held him close, the small heartbeat fluttering against his chest. The baby's eyes fluttered open, bright, curious, unknowing. In that moment, Ethan wanted to believe they could start over. That maybe the sins of their blood wouldn't poison this new life. But then the baby's fingers curled around his thumb, and something inside Ethan broke. He saw his mother's face again, the same face that stared up from Lila's old adoption photo, the woman who gave them both life and unknowingly damned them to this. Tears slipped down his cheeks. "I'm so sorry," he whispered, rocking the baby gently. "You didn't deserve this." Behind him, Lila stirred awake, watching. For a moment, her eyes softened, but when she noticed the tears on his face, her expression hardened. "You're ashamed of him," she said quietly. He turned. "No, yes, you are. You think he's some kind of mistake." "Lila, please, don't lie to me, Ethan." Her voice trembled, waking the child, who began to cry. "You don't see him as a miracle. You see him as proof of what we did." Her sobs filled the sterile room. Nurses rushed in, shushing her, guiding her back to bed. Ethan stood frozen, holding the baby tighter, feeling like he was drowning in the weight of her words. When they were discharged 2 days later, they drove home in silence. The rain had stopped, but the air still smelled like thunder. At the house, Ethan opened the front door and paused. The walls that once held hope now felt like a tomb. The nursery, painted soft yellow, the room of laughter and plans, looked different now. The crib he'd built sat waiting, empty, like a monument to a dream gone wrong. Lila carried the baby inside, humming under her breath. Her song was off-key, tired, trembling. She didn't look at Ethan. She just whispered, "We're safe now. No one can take him from us." Ethan watched her disappear into the nursery, the door creaking shut behind her. He stood there in the dark hallway, water dripping from his jacket, realizing something terrible, something he hadn't been able to name until that moment. The woman he'd once loved more than life itself was slipping away. And what was left of her love was turning into something else, something dangerous. The storm had ended outside, but inside that little house on Willow Creek, it had only just begun. At first, it was just whispers, faint and harmless, like wind through the reeds. A nurse who recognized a name on a birth record, a clerk at the county office who couldn't resist a secret too strange not to share, and soon the story began to slip through the town like smoke. "Did you hear? That new couple, the ones with the baby, they're related." Willow Creek had always been the kind of town that fed on gossip. What started as murmurs in the grocery line became full conversations in the diner booths, then turned into quiet pity or disgust behind polite smiles. By the time Ethan went to the hardware store, he could feel it, the shift, the cashier's forced grin, the lingering stares. One man muttered, "Some things should stay buried," loud enough for him to hear. He didn't say a word, he just left the bag of nails on the counter and walked out. At home, Lila noticed the change too. People she once called friends stopped visiting. Her coworkers stopped texting. Neighbors who used to drop off casseroles now closed their blinds when she walked by. The isolation twisted her. She'd stand at the nursery window for hours, staring at the street, her fingers pressed against the glass, whispering, "They're watching us, Ethan. They want to take him." Ethan tried to reassure her, but his words no longer reached her. She was drifting somewhere else into a world built of fear and half-truths. She started locking the doors even when Ethan was home. She unplugged the baby monitor, saying they could be listening. She stopped answering the phone, stopped going outside. One night, he woke to find her gone. Panic ripped through him until he saw her outside barefoot in the yard, standing in the rain, cradling the baby close. Her nightgown clung to her skin, soaked through, her hair plastered to her face. "Lila," he shouted, running to her. "What are you doing?" She looked at him with wild, hollow eyes. "He can't sleep in there," she whispered. "The walls are listening." He pulled her back inside, trembling. "You're scaring me." She clutched the baby tighter, her voice rising. "They'll take him, Ethan. They'll take him like they took us. Don't you see it's happening again?" Her words broke into sobs. He held her, feeling her body shake in his arms, her heart beating too fast. She was unraveling, and he didn't know how to stop it. The next morning, a letter arrived. No return address, just a single sheet of paper inside. "You should be ashamed. What you've done is against God and nature. That child will never be right." Ethan read it once and tore it in half, but Lila found the pieces in the trash and pieced them back together, her hands trembling. She stared at the words for hours. That night, she stopped talking altogether. The house began to change with her. The baby's toys stayed scattered on the floor for days. The dishes piled up. The curtains stayed drawn. It was as if light itself no longer belonged there. Ethan tried calling her adoptive mother's relatives, anyone who might help, but the numbers were disconnected. No one wanted to be tied to them. When he returned to the living room one evening, he found Lila sitting on the couch, the TV flickering silently before her. The baby slept in her arms, peaceful and unaware. Her eyes were empty, staring at nothing. "You know what they said about Mom?" she murmured suddenly. "What?" Ethan asked. "That she went crazy after Dad left, that she started hearing things, seeing things. They said madness runs in the blood." She looked up at him then, a strange smile playing on her lips. "So maybe this was never our fault, Ethan. Maybe it was written in us from the start." He stepped closer, but something in her gaze made him stop. Lila kissed the baby's forehead and whispered, "We're not cursed. They are." And that was when Ethan knew something was breaking beyond repair, not just in their home, but in her mind. The line between love and fear had vanished. And the woman he'd once known, the one who'd saved him from loneliness, was slipping deeper into something dangerous, something that no amount of love could pull her back from. The whispers outside had started the storm. But now the real danger was inside the house. It was only a matter of time before the silence turned to screams. By late autumn, the Reeves house no longer sounded alive. The laughter, the music, even the hum of conversation, gone. In its place was the slow tick of a clock that no one wound anymore, and the low, steady murmur of Lila's voice coming from the nursery at all hours. Ethan barely recognized her now. She moved like a ghost through the rooms, hair unwashed, nightgown hanging loose, eyes rimmed in purple. Sometimes she'd stand in the corner of the nursery with the baby pressed against her chest, whispering things Ethan couldn't quite hear. When he did catch words, they were fragments, broken sentences about them, about blood, about keeping him safe. He tried to tell himself this was postpartum depression, that she'd get better with time, that love could still fix what truth had broken, but deep down he knew it wasn't just sadness. It was something darker, something that looked too much like the stories she'd told him about her mother losing her mind after Ethan's father disappeared. One night, he found her sitting on the floor beside the crib, her face lit only by the glow of the baby monitor. Her lips moved in a steady rhythm. "They can't take you. They can't take you. Mommy won't let them. Lila," he whispered from the doorway, "you're scaring me." She looked up slowly, her pupils huge, her voice calm in a way that made his skin crawl. "You should be scared, Ethan. They'll come for him, for us. They want to erase us." "Who?" She stood, clutching the baby tighter. "Everyone, the doctors, the people who sent that letter, the ones who whisper when you go to town. They think he's a sin, but he's not. He's proof that love doesn't care about rules." Ethan took a step closer, his voice trembling. "Lila, please, give him to me. You need to rest." Her laugh was sharp, sudden, like glass breaking. "Rest? You want me to rest so you can take him? You've been planning it, haven't you?" Ethan froze. "What are you talking about? You think I don't see it?" She screamed. "You've been working late, calling people, pretending you want to help. You want to take him away from me." He raised his hand slowly, trying to calm her. "I just want you to get better." She backed toward the crib, shaking her head. "You want me gone, just like everyone else." The baby began to cry, a high, piercing wail that cut through the room. Lila's breathing grew frantic. She turned toward the window, whispering to herself over and over, "They'll take him. They'll take him." Ethan stepped forward, desperate now. "Lila, stop. Please, you're scaring him." Her hands trembled as she held the baby, her knuckles white. For a moment, she looked down at the tiny face and her expression softened. Tears filled her eyes. "SHH, baby. Mommy's here. Mommy won't let anyone hurt you." Then she looked up at Ethan again, her voice turning cold. "Not even you." That night, Ethan couldn't sleep. He sat in the kitchen with the lights off, staring at the folded adoption papers he couldn't bring himself to throw away. Every word felt like a curse written in ink. He thought about calling the sheriff, about telling someone everything. But what could he say that the woman he loved, his own sister, was losing her mind, that she might hurt their child? The shame was too heavy. He stayed silent. At 3 a.m., he heard movement upstairs. A floorboard creaked, followed by the soft click of a door. Then silence. Ethan's pulse quickened. He grabbed a flashlight and crept up the stairs. The nursery door was open. The crib was empty. "Lila," he whispered, no answer. He found her outside again, barefoot in the frost, the baby in her arms. She was standing in the yard, whispering up to the sky. "They said you'd take him from me, but you won't. You can't. He's mine, Lila," he hissed, rushing toward her. "You'll freeze. Come inside." She turned slowly, her face pale and wet from tears, the baby wailing in her arms. "He's safe here," she said softly. "The air is clean. No one can reach us. Please," Ethan begged, "give him to me." She hesitated, then stepped closer. For a moment, he thought she would hand the baby over. But instead, she whispered, "If I give him to you, he won't be safe." Ethan took another step, heart hammering. "I would never hurt him, Lila. You know that." She smiled then, small, broken, and terrifying. "You already did." By the time he got her back inside, both of them were shaking. He wrapped a blanket around her and the baby, whispering, "We'll get help. Tomorrow I'll call someone." She didn't answer. She just stared at the baby, rocking him slowly. Her lips barely moved as she whispered, "Tomorrow's too late." Ethan didn't know what she meant, not then. He stayed awake the rest of the night, watching her from across the room as she sat in the rocking chair, humming that same eerie lullaby. The storm outside had long passed, but the tension in that house was a living thing now, crawling through the walls, breathing between them, and deep down, Ethan knew what every hour of silence was building toward. Something was coming, something that would end everything. The night it happened, the world was quiet, too quiet, as if even the wind knew what was coming. Ethan sat on the couch in the dark, the baby monitor glowing faintly beside him. Through it came the soft crackle of static, then the familiar rhythm of Lila's humming. She'd been singing to the baby for hours, the same lullaby, over and over. He'd planned to call someone the next morning, a counselor, a doctor, anyone who could help, but he never got the chance. Because by midnight, the humming stopped, then came the crying. Ethan's heart jumped. It wasn't the soft cry of a baby, it was sharper, panicked. He leapt from the couch and ran up the stairs, calling out her name. Lila, the nursery door was half open, the light flickering. When he pushed it, it creaked loud enough to echo down the hallway. The first thing he saw was the baby, alone, crying in the crib. The second thing he saw was the knife. Lila stood by the dresser, her back to him, clutching it so tightly her knuckles looked bone, white. Her shoulders trembled with each breath. The nightgown she wore was smeared with something, dark, glistening. Ethan froze. Lila put it down. She didn't move. He's safe now. She whispered, "I made sure of it." Made sure of what? His voice cracked, terror creeping in. She turned slowly, and the sight made his blood run cold. Her eyes, once soft, once loving, were hollow, distant, as if she wasn't even inside herself anymore. "You were going to take him away," she said. "You called them. I heard you." "Lila, I didn't. Don't lie to me," she screamed, her voice echoing off the walls. "You think I don't know? You wanted to send him away. You wanted to destroy our family." He raised his hands, tears already welling. "Lila, please, listen to me. No one's taking him. I just want to help you. You're not well." Her expression softened for a moment, then twisted into something unrecognizable. "You're just like them," she whispered, "like the ones who said I shouldn't exist, like the ones who tore us apart before we even knew each other." Ethan took a step forward. "You're scaring me. Please, give me the knife." She shook her head slowly, almost peacefully. "No, Ethan, it's better this way. It has to end with us. No one will ever hurt him if we're gone." The words hit him like ice. "What are you saying?" Her tears glistened in the flickering light. "You can't fix a curse, Ethan. You can only stop it from spreading." Then she lifted the knife. He lunged forward instinctively, grabbing her wrist, shouting her name. The struggle was clumsy, desperate, raw, two people drowning in panic and pain. The baby screamed from the crib as they stumbled, the knife glinting between them. "Lila, stop!" Ethan cried, gripping her tighter. "I won't let you take him," she screamed back, twisting the blade. It happened fast, too fast, a flash of steel, a gasp, a sound that didn't seem human. When it was over, Ethan staggered back, clutching his stomach. His shirt bloomed red beneath his hands. Lila froze, staring at what she'd done, the knife slipping from her fingers and clattering to the floor. The baby's cries filled the silence. "Ethan," she whispered. "No, no, no, no." She dropped beside him, shaking him, begging. "I didn't mean to. You made me scared. You made me. Please wake up, please." He tried to speak, but no words came. His eyes found hers one last time. Confusion, heartbreak, forgiveness, all flashing in an instant. Then he went still. Lila screamed, a sound that tore through the house, through the walls, through the night itself. When the neighbors called the police, they said they heard a woman wailing like her soul had split in two. Officers arrived minutes later. They found the front door open, rain blowing in through the porch. Inside, they found Lila on the floor, cradling Ethan's body, her nightgown soaked in blood. The baby was in the crib, still crying. Lila's voice was barely a whisper as they led her away. "He wanted to take my baby. I had to protect him. I had to protect our love." The officers didn't respond. One of them quietly picked up the baby, holding him close as they carried him out into the cold. Behind them, the sirens wailed, and the house on Willow Creek fell silent forever. Morning came to Willow Creek heavy with fog and disbelief. Police tape fluttered on the porch where wedding photos had once hung. The news vans arrived before the sun fully broke, their lenses turning tragedy into broadcast. The headline spread like wildfire. Local woman murders husband. DNA reveals they were siblings. What had once been rumor became cold, sickening truth. The story moved from local whispers to national fascination overnight. Reporters swarmed the courthouse. Strangers left flowers outside the house, not out of pity, but in the kind of morbid awe reserved for the unthinkable. Inside the station, Lila sat alone in a gray cell, wearing hospital scrubs, her wrists trembling from the cold metal cuffs. Her eyes were vacant. She kept asking the same question to every officer who passed. "Where's my baby?" No one ever answered her directly. The baby, Noah, had been placed under protective custody. The system that had once separated Ethan and Lila as children now shielded their child from their legacy. The trial began 6 months later. The courtroom was full every day. Locals, reporters, even students from nearby universities studying genetic sexual attraction and its psychological effects. The prosecution painted Lila as a manipulative woman who hid the truth until her lies closed in on her. But the defense told a different story, a story of trauma, isolation, and the tragic collision of fate. When her turn came to testify, Lila's voice was soft, fragile. She didn't deny killing Ethan. She didn't deny knowing. What she denied was control. Some stories don't end with justice. They end with echoes. When the police packed up their tape and the cameras left Willow Creek, all that remained was a silence too heavy for words. The yellow nursery curtains fluttered in the wind like they were waving goodbye to no one, and the town that once gossiped could no longer speak it. All Ethan Reeves wanted love to fill the emptiness left by a broken childhood. Lila Reeves wanted family to make her whole again, and somewhere between those two hungers they found each other, never knowing that the blood that bound them would one day spill between them. They say love can save you. But sometimes it doesn't heal what's broken, it just hides the cracks until the light hits them. Lila didn't kill out of hate, she killed out of fear, the kind that grows when love turns into survival, when shame becomes madness, when the line between family and forever blurs beyond repair. And maybe that's the real tragedy, not the blood, not the crime, not even the murder, but how two people who had finally found what they were searching for were never meant to have it. The world will remember them as a headline, but behind the story, behind the horror, there was a truth few will ever understand, that sometimes the heart doesn't know it's not supposed to love the one it's lost. And in the end, maybe Ethan was right. Fate doesn't bring us home. It just shows us how far we've fallen from it. This is Murder Book 360. Where every love story leaves a shadow. "You think I meant to hurt him," she said, her eyes filling with tears. "He was my whole world. I loved him before I knew who he was, and I loved him even after." What would you do if the only person who ever made you feel safe turned out to be part of the nightmare you were born from? The courtroom was silent. Even the prosecutor's pen stopped moving. A forensic psychiatrist testified that Lila suffered from genetic sexual attraction, a rare psychological condition where close relatives separated at birth develop intense romantic or sexual feelings when reunited as adults. Wasn't lust, he explained, but something more complex, a desperate pull toward the missing part of themselves. He described it as the brain's misfired attempt to heal old wounds with the wrong kind of love. The defense leaned heavily on this, combined with postpartum psychosis arguing that Lila's mind fractured under shame, fear, and hormonal collapse. Her diary, recovered from the house, became the centerpiece of the case. In it, she wrote, "He's not just my husband. He's the missing half of me I've searched for all my life. The blood doesn't make it wrong, it makes it unbreakable. If I lose him, I lose myself." Those words sealed her fate. The jury deliberated for 3 days. When they returned, the verdict was guilty of second-degree murder, with a recommendation for psychiatric care rather than a life sentence. When the judge read the sentence, 25 years to life in a secure mental facility, Lila showed no emotion. She simply looked at the empty seat where Ethan's family should have been. There was no one left. In prison, Lila's mind wavered between lucidity and delusion. Some days she asked about Ethan, convinced he'd survived. Other days, she talked to him as if he were still beside her, whispering from the shadows. The doctors said she sometimes sang lullabies to herself at night, the same song she used to hum in the nursery. One nurse found a note she'd written and taped to the wall above her bed. The handwriting was shaky but deliberate. They said our love was wrong. Maybe they were right. But it was still love. As for Noah, he was adopted by a quiet couple 2 towns away. They never told him the full story, only that his parents had loved him very much but couldn't stay. But as he grew, he started having dreams, fragments of a melody, a woman's soft voice whispering, "You're safe now, baby." When he turned 18, he found the old court documents by accident while applying for college. The words Ethan Reeves and Lila Reeves caught his eye, and beneath them his own name, Noah. He read everything, every detail, every headline. The next morning, he drove to the old house on Willow Creek. It was abandoned now, windows boarded, paint peeling, but the yellow nursery curtains still hung behind cracked glass. He stood there for a long time, the weight of everything pressing down on him. Then he whispered the only thing he could think to say, "I forgive you." Lila never knew. She died 2 years later in her sleep, the doctors said, peaceful. Her last words, recorded by the night nurse on duty, were simple. "Tell Ethan I kept my promise." I kept him safe. The world moved on as it always does, but for the people of Willow Creek, that house on the hill never lost its shadow. They say that on some nights, when the wind blows just right, you can still hear a lullaby drifting from the broken window, soft, sad, and endless, the kind of song only a mother or a sister could sing. In the end, truth doesn't always free us. Sometimes it buries us. Ethan and Lila Reeves thought love had finally healed what life had broken 2 lonely hearts finding home in each other. But what happens when that home is built on a secret so dark it was never meant to be uncovered? In Willow Creek, love became a crime and family became a curse, a husband and wife, a brother and sister, bound by blood, torn apart by fate. And long after the trial ended and the house grew cold, one question still lingers. Was it madness that destroyed them, or the kind of love the world could never understand? This is Murder Book 360, where every heartbeat tells a story, and every story leaves a scar. Subscribe for more true stories that blur the line between love, lies, and death.